Hey there, my name is Robert Newman. I am a real estate digital marketing expert. I focus on SEO and inbound marketing, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how does IDX affect SEO on your real estate websites. So this is kind of a little bit of a deep topic. So if you're already lost in terms of terminology, I have recently launched a video on my YouTube channel called Making Sense of IDX. It's a short view. I strongly recommend that you dive into that one if you're having any questions about what IDX is in general. Like if you just don't understand what the terminology is, watch that video first. So let's get into how does IDX affect your SEO? Well, the IDX's purpose is to serve up properties on your website, right? So this is an example. We're going into a neighborhood, and then we've got theoretically listings somewhere on the neighborhood. All right. Now, in most cases, most IDXs, and by IDXs I mean these are vendors that provide data for you. So you've got two separate sets of conversation when it comes to how does IDX affect my SEO. You have external plugins, like external people that are feeding your IDX, like your properties into your site. All right. Those vendors there's a long list of those vendors like Diverse Solution, iHomeFinder, IDX Broker. The list goes on, but basically showcase IDX. And then there's companies that make websites that have their own IDX solution, but they're building on WordPress like I am. And they have plugins that they've designed, and that would be Firepoint and Carrot and a few other companies like that. Okay, and what are these, but these companies are all doing the same thing. Okay, they're feeding properties into a site, and they're telling you that they've got something special about the way that they're doing that. And that may very well be true. But most of these companies, these external vendors working with WordPress, have not licked a really, really important challenge that comes with being an external vendor that provides IDX into a website. And what is that problem? Well, for SEO to be really, truly effective, if you're a real estate site and you've identified the fact that you're a real estate site, which site is not doing the best job of because it's got a label called Candom McKay. So Google doesn't necessarily know for sure that it's a real estate website. Now, fortunately, this is an older company that's had this domain for a long time. And so Google has long ago figured out that this particular domain is talking about real estate. Now, there's two sides to the kind of website that you can build when it comes to speaking about real estate. And the way that most people are familiar with real estate websites talking about real estate is they're going to have a lot of search functionality based on searching for properties. Well, if that is the majority of what your website is supposed to be doing, that's searching for properties. Like if you go onto your site and you know that you don't have a lot of content pages, you don't have video, you don't have blog posts, what you have is a fast website that deals mostly in searches. So I'm going to use kind of a mixed example because, and what do I mean by that? I mean, there's a lot of content on this site that I'm using as an example. This is a Sierra Interactive website. Okay, and mostly what they're going to do is they're going to deal in searches, but they do have a lot of pre-built content about help for buyers, like all these pages. And you might think to yourself, like, oh, hey, I've got a lot of stuff like this. All right. But here's the question that I would have for all of you. This is not really valuable content in the sense that there's probably nothing unique or interesting about it. There might be something that like it might be a true representation of what Jeff is doing for his clients. But whether or not he's got like a 15-point process that he helps his buyers with that would make this page really stand out, that's another question. So I don't think users are going to be bouncing onto these pages and using them all that much. But the site that he's decided to partner with, which is Sierra Interactive, does very, very fast searches. That's this. And then you can see here like all the areas that are on the site, and it's serving up all the properties for that site. So arguably the main value of this site is the searches that are being done. Okay, so which leads us into when you're identifying for Google that you're a real estate website and you're trying to say that you've got properties on the site, well, the expectation of Google is that they can see those properties, that they can register them and look at them. Now, here's where the challenge of IDX gets weird. All right, for most companies, we don't like when we're using a plugin from another IDX provider, such as IDX Broker. Most of you are going to notice, or some of you may or may not notice this up here. All right, what's this? We've actually transferred off the website. We're not on the website anymore. We're on a page on IDX Broker. Okay, and it is identified by the switch in the URL. Now, the only person getting any credit for this is IDX Broker, though the subdomain is your own subdomain. So it's your own little section of IDX Broker. So in theory, you can do some SEO using this right here. But it's pretty confusing for Google to try to look at two separate sources of SEO ranking, and I don't personally bother with that. What I do is I figured out a way to feed the properties from IDX Broker into WordPress first, so that there is kind of a combination solution in terms of SEO on the sites that we build, where they can see these properties. So the need for Google to understand that you're serving up properties as it relates to neighborhood pages is solved. But we are not trying to optimize rank based on a single address inside of our websites. In theory, some of these other sites, such as this site, could be ranked because what somebody has done, like SEO Interactive, so there's companies that have built what they call their own IDX solutions. It's just a really confusing language, and what it means is that there are some enterprising technology providers out there that have said, we're going to take the raw MLS feed and we're going to redesign the way that those feeds look, like the way that your property information is displayed. It becomes custom to that particular provider. And when you reorganize the data and put it on a site, it is, as far as Google is concerned, it's a unique destination on your site. In other words, as far as Google is concerned, this property is unique to Jeff's website, which is not necessarily true because he's actually getting the exact same MLS data from someplace else and then feeding it onto his site. So what ends up happening is that these SEO Interactive sites, they do have a lot more property information on them, but it's very unusual and very rare that you get any kind of traffic coming into your site based on a single property. And Google is recording that this site is like 10,000 pages big, and about 5 or 10 years ago, how big your site was a domain authority signal. That is not the case anymore, okay? Google is moving more and more to what's called a page experience methodology. And fortunately for the best of these real estate technology companies, that hasn't really helped them and it hasn't really hurt them. And I'll explain why. Page experience is what happens when somebody looks at a page, all right? The pros of a built-in, like, IDX that is distributing all the information as if it is unique and original onto the site is that there's a lot of it. And if anybody ever interacts with this page, such as clicks on an image, interacts with the page, okay, which some of the better vendors have put a lot of calls to action here, little things that seem to be very useful in terms of clicking. The problem, that's a pro for sure. The con is that most people use these search sites in a way that I'm about ready to show you right now, which is where it's great, the site is fast, they're looking through properties, they're like, the price range isn't there. Oh, look, there's something that's this is my price range. Let's look at this. And then they go in here, they quickly note that maybe it's pending. Now they've got this like, oh, you have to register the site. And most of the time people bounce off that, like 80% of the time. People just back up and do exactly what I just showed you. And what they're going to do is they're going to keep doing this because they don't want to register. What does this do? Well, When you're getting activity on the pages, and you will with many pages on the Sierra Interactive site, that's a really high quality signal. But unfortunately, there's also really low quality signals that you're sending too. Every time you're bouncing onto pages, there's no interaction. And you're not staying very long because you've gotten a login pop-up that's encouraging you to back off the page or do something else. Well, that lowers your score. With really high quality solutions such as like your page experience score, and with really high quality solutions like Sierra Interactive, Real Estate Webmasters, you've got enough people clicking on enough pages that they are not currently watching their organic rankings sink too much, but they are dealing with the fact that search has become commoditized. And I think that the numbers that I've been looking at have slowly been trending downwards, but by minor amounts. Mostly just because page experience is much better served by deeper content pages. Now, where these buyers and seller pages, because it does, strangely enough, directly impact SEO for these search-based sites. If you have a lot of content like Jeff does, you will end up, like, here's what's happening. Google will look at the total amount of time that somebody's hanging on your site. If all you're doing is building a search site and you're putting absolutely no helpful pages up on the site whatsoever, chances are very strong that sites like Real Estate Webmasters and Sierra Interactive will fail for you in SEO completely. You'll have to drive traffic in using PPC and then hope that people register early on in the process. And in my experience, and especially recently, those kinds of leads are becoming lower and lower quality. It's not a matter of you can't get them. It's just a matter of they may not necessarily be very good when you do get them. Hold on. I don't want that. I want this. I don't want that. All right. And here's what I mean by that. So this is the #1 highest domain authority site that currently is backlinked into Sierra Interactive. Okay, it used to be one of my previous people that I'd done a little bit of consulting for, Joe Manna USA, but now there's a lot of other sites that are being ranked slightly higher. Okay, this is the highest. So I just want everybody to understand as I'm doing the video that I'm not choosing some low quality Sierra Interactive site. I'm choosing the highest quality Sierra Interactive website. So when you look at, and I like Sierra Interactive when I'm talking about search because they are a better overall company than like Real Estate Webmasters by far. So I don't really like promoting Real Estate Webmasters in these videos all that much. I talk about them a lot. They make a good product, but they don't have very good customer-centric leadership. So if you decided to call them, or you might make a decision, and they're very expensive, so you might make a decision based on using them, and I would not recommend that necessarily. So when we look at what's happening on the Sierra Interactive site from an organic perspective, you start to see what I mean. They are doing okay for some search terms on the site. The SEO is terrible because most of the pages, like all of these pages, the same top keyword is targeted, which is Jeff Cook Real Estate. So it's really, they are getting some searches, Charleston and SC MLS, and you might ask yourself, why are they getting that particular keyword on this particular page? It's probably because Jeff is offering a faster MLS search than the MLS themselves. So Google understands that if you're going to be looking at properties on this page, that most likely you're going to have a better search experience than if you even went to the actual MLS. And that's great. That's a fantastic result for a real estate website. But and it's all based on the IDX, which is what the topic of this video is. It's based on the fact that they have a built-in internal IDX. So that's great. And they've got good results on these foreclosure pages. So you go to this, and this is 3 sentences of content on top of a search page. That's it. So it's 2 foreclosures. This is about the maximum value that you get out of a experience built around fast searches, okay? And not being focused on content. Now, there is an example of a Sierra Interactive site that has built a lot of content on it that is gonna, that blows the doors off, you know, SEO, right? And that's Ruby Home, which is one of the best, most optimized real estate websites that's out there. And what has happened with that site is that somebody has limited the very limited capabilities of the Sierra Interactive blogging platform, and they've made about as good of a blog post as you're ever going to see. Okay? And then it connects into really fast search over here. So this site does really well because it's got a lot of really deep content. The page experience is incredible. So people are probably spending 5-10 minutes on the site. So it does everything that Google is looking for on a real estate website. But there are only 1 or 2 Sierra Interactive sites out of about 3,000 live sites that are doing anything even close to this. Okay, so this is really a one-off. And they're using very limited content management systems in order to produce the best content that they possibly can produce. Now, fortunately for this agent and all real estate agents in general, very few people in the real estate space focus on content. Now, if you did, though, what you would want to do is you'd want to have IDX Broker as your plugin, and you'd want to come up with your own technology solution like I like. So let's just say you're going to build really good content. Okay? And now you start to see that smaller houses or smaller sites with not nearly as good of a content on them in terms of the site itself, you start to see, I had done a blog post on Meridian, Idaho that has 1,000 words on it. But because the page experience is good throughout the site and there's a lot of really deep information on the site, what you end up getting is you're ranking number 4 for the term Meridian, Idaho, which is just kind of the same thing that Ruby Home does, but they have spent a lot more time and money doing it. So it's a lot more effort to get to the place that they've gotten, and we're still getting the same result. And it's just a principle in how you're building the site. Here is an example of these properties are readable as properties on this page. All right, that's an IDX-based SEO strategy. So Google can see on a page talking about why I live in Meridian that there are properties listed. They can see these and they can register them. They see, and it's constantly changing content because it's being fed into from the MLS. So these properties change. This isn't static. So that creates a really useful dynamic page when it comes to ranking for SEO. And you can see that our philosophy, our approach, is much more related to content. Okay, so if somebody's on this site and wants to know more information, how to sanitize your home, why Meridian, Idaho is a great city for everyone, discover Paramount, these are basically blog posts that are really deeply centered on living in Meridian. All right, so if somebody wants to know about living in Meridian, there's going to be a lot of information here. And as an ancillary surprise, they get the searches over here. It's the same philosophy that Ruby Home has. Okay, the difference between the two is we've got a much better content management system, and if we wanted to, we can do graphs and charts and tables on the content. We can provide a lot more value to the end user if we want, a lot easier than somebody using a Ruby Home site can, like somebody using a Sierra Interactive site can. And believe it or not, this all does play back into the conversation about what kind of IDX do you want to put on your site? What do you want that IDX to actually do for you? How important is it in terms of SEO? The challenge that you're going to have for all those people that follow me and all those people that are thinking about getting into a WordPress solution, this is where IDX kind of gets a little bit more complicated. Diverse solutions, Showcase IDX, most of these guys that haven't built like a built-in Realty NA, all these guys have not built in a IDX that feeds in properties as unique properties on your WordPress site. For that, you need a more sophisticated development solution, and as far as I know, nobody has come up with one besides us in InboundREM, but this video is not meant to be a pitch piece. It is meant to educate you, but in my opinion, I think that if you're going to have a lot of success for SEO on a real estate website, you have to figure out the way. You have to beat the thing about getting your properties recognized as unique individual properties on the site. Now, you can enter those in manually through a property input, and a lot of those IDX solutions that I just mentioned have them. And I think 1 or 2 of those IDX solutions might even have something where you feed in some featured listings on the homepage, and you can get those read as unique, like properties. But I don't think that they've addressed the problem page to page, neighborhood to neighborhood. And that's how most real estate websites are getting leads. It's like, if you're competing against Zillow and Trulia, and obviously we all are, your advantage as a local realtor as it relates to serving up properties is being able to identify that you're truly an expert in that area. And you've got two choices about providing that expertise. You go with like a search or IDX site. And what I mean by an IDX site is the value of this site is all the saved searches that are on it. And this is where Sierra Interactive and Real Estate Webmasters have always focused their efforts. You break out into a certain city and you target every single subsection of property that there is: townhomes, condos, fractionals if you're in a second home market, cabins if you're up in the mountains, ski chalets if you're in Aspen. Do you see what I'm saying? You really go with property type, and you put that all on a site, and in theory that showcases your expertise, or at least that used to be the way it worked. The challenge that you have is that all these Sierra Interactive and Real Estate Webmasters and Real Geeks, the sites that do this and do this well, have really saturated the market with sites that perform like that. So it doesn't really demonstrate your expertise the same way that it used to. It's not as advantageous. It still works. It's just not as powerful as it once was. So your other choice, which is the path lesser traveled for sure, is to demonstrate your expertise. You could do the same kind of search and search filters, which we don't usually spend all of our time building these search filters on my solutions, but you could do it. And then you also demonstrate your expertise through information, actual content on the site that explains what is interesting about these areas, and you do use a lot of charts and graphs to make sure that your research is deep and thorough, and that you're really educating people on how they want to live in these certain areas. Lifestyle information is actually not all that common in real estate. Like, there are lots of realtors that may have a great newsletter, but they haven't put it on a blog. They haven't put it on a website. It's not there in a way that Google can see it. So when you go, if your desire is to serve a local audience, the lesser competition way to do that is to put a lot of content on the site. You still want the site to be proficient in providing searches, but you don't necessarily need to focus on speed to search, which is what Real Estate Webmasters and all these guys focuses on. Because if you have enough ancillary information on the site, you can and will give somebody an experience that's worth a fraction of a second or a second or two longer for a search result to pop up. So IDX is a very big topic, and how it affects SEO is a very big topic. So I'm gonna leave this video where it's at, and I'm gonna tell everybody that's watching it, if you have specific questions, drop them in the comments of this video, and I'll try to answer them individually. Like, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions about, oh, my individual IDX, and what do you know about this IDX, and what do you know about that IDX? And I'll try to simplify it this way. I've looked at hundreds, and there's nobody providing the solution. The way that these guys like Sierra Interactive and Real Estate Webmasters locks you into their solution forever is that nobody's really come up with a great way to build in an IDX solution into, let's say, a WordPress website so that you can own it yourself. As far as I know, I'm ahead of everybody in terms of having come up with that solution. I'm sure other people will, and I'd love to build a WordPress plugin where all the properties all the time are fed into WordPress as a unique page of content. The problem with WordPress is that's going to slow it down a lot. So, and to the point that trying to crack that particular nut just hasn't hit the top of my priority list yet. So I hope this video was helpful. Please, for all of those watching, do me a personal favor. If there's anything in here that I said to you that you've learned from, I think I've done a good job in terms of providing information to you. So give me a thumbs up. And if there's something you think I missed that was dramatic, drop a comment in the video, and I'll do my best to answer it for you. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. See you the next time.